Hello, everybody. So we just had a second night of all-out fighting between Israel and Iran. Of course, all of this is following the surprise attack that the Israelis did on Iran, an attack which is an act of war and a clear violation of the UN Charter. And what we are seeing unfolding at the moment is exactly as I said 2 days ago. The Europeans are basically all repeating the mantra that Israel has the right to defend itself, with which by now they mean that Israel can basically do whatever it wants. And the Europeans are currently calling on all parties to stand down, which is of course a joke, because the Israel already from the very beginning said that this is going to be a multi-day and probably multiple week assault on Iran, and this is not going to be done in just one day. So currently calling on all parties to stand down is basically a call for Iran to surrender. This is not what they are doing. Iran actually is firing back, and don't get me wrong, I find all of this horrible. It is an utterly despicable situation. But it's a despicable situation which, once again, was started a chain of violence that was started by Israel. And now Israel is actually getting hit pretty hard as well. Although in Iran, too, we see that the air defenses of both countries are not able to intercept the projectiles and the implements of war that are coming from the other side. So on the one hand, we get a lot of imagery. I mean, we know by now that at least 78 people have died in Iran. At least in the first day, we hear by now that another building with 60 people who died was hit in Tehran. We know that people died also in other parts of the country, but at the same time, we are also getting a lot of footage now from Tel Aviv. Iran is successfully firing a lot of rockets into Tel Aviv, and is able to take out certain military infrastructure. I don't know what exactly they are. The Israelis were also firing in Iran at a oil refinery, the largest one in the region, or even the largest one in the world actually. And in return, the Israelis are shooting now at the Iranians are now also were also shooting at the facilities, the oil facilities in Haifa, Israel. So the two sides are going after each other's in energy infrastructure, it seems. What exactly is being hit will only come out over the next couple of days. But you know, some of the video footage that is coming out also on Twitter is verifiably now from this conflict and from Tel Aviv is really speaks a unique language. Like, I mean, the impacts here are huge. So the Iron Dome is definitely failing. I mean, we knew the Iron Dome cannot intercept a good part of the Iranian missiles from last time these strikes happened. About half a year ago, and now we see again that certainly all the hypersonic missiles are making it through. Although it must be said, the Israelis are able to intercept a good number of missiles. You can see them explode in the skies, but at the same time, a lot of them are coming through, and some of these explosions are very, very frightening and scary. You can see how large these explosions then are. And that Israel's defenses are not able to intercept all of those. There's also talk at the moment on the interwebs that a good part of the missiles that Iran currently is firing are actually older versions or of what they still have in their stockpile, in order to also force the Israelis to deplete their missile defense system and then strike through with their more modern weaponry. Although at the moment, I must tell you all, like what you read on Twitter, what you see on Twitter, and what you read in most of the newspapers and so on, all of this is being reported under the fog of war. And especially on Twitter, there's a lot of fakes. There's a lot of fake videos. It's quite scary, especially videos about jets, like military airplanes being shot down, and some of these things are like straight out of video games. And some footage is from other wars, some footage is from Ukraine, some footage is from previous attacks on Israel, like when Iran the last time struck Israel after Israel fired and killed people in Tehran. I mean, I must emphasize this time and again, so far we haven't had a single time when Iran fired at Israel first. Iran always fired in response to Israel, either killing people in Tehran, assassinating people there, or assassinating and killing people in the embassy buildings of Iran in Damascus. There's countless such instances in which the Israelis are forcing the Iranians to somehow react or otherwise lose escalation dominance. The point also at the moment is that if Iran stands down and stops counter-striking, then Israel will just take that as a proof that Iran is weak and double down. And you see this narrative unfolding in front of our eyes, unfortunately, at the moment. I think I have it. I have it here. Let me see. This idea that is being circulated, and you see it in several Western newspapers, right? That the Israel's attack on Iran has a real chance of bringing about regime change. That the Iranians and the Americans are operating under the belief that if they do this attack on Iran well enough, then not only will they be able to seriously cripple the nuclear program, which is of course the number one reason that the Israelis are giving at the moment for their unprecedented attack, that the nuclear program is so horrible and is such an imminent threat that if they don't destroy it today, then tomorrow Israel will be annihilated with a nuclear weapon. Luckily, the wonderful Glenn Greenwald on System Update already picked that argument apart and showed that this idea that Iran is just 1 or 2 years away from a nuclear bomb actually goes back all the way to 1984. Glenn Greenwald could show that in 1984 we've had that headline already, and ever since 84, every other year you had these alarmist reports coming out saying that Iran is just about to get the bomb, just about to get the bomb, just about to get the bomb, and Iran needs to be taken out now. So the difference this time is that now Israel got the green light, and of course it got the green light from the United States. And what was not clear until very recently, until about a day ago, is that the United States, Donald Trump was intimately involved in this, and that something that is now currently being reported on several news sites with a lot of glee, the gleefulness with which you can read in several outlets that the Israelis and the Americans outsmarted the Iranians because the Iranians were under the belief that no attack was imminent until the nuclear talks with the United States were concluded. Because, and this is absolutely logical, and me and others, we were all working under the premise that as long as these negotiations are ongoing, the United States would not okay any kind of Israeli strikes, because the goal is still to achieve with diplomatic means the denuclearization or a nuclear promise, right? A new nuclear deal, a new JCPOA with the Iranians, because under our mindset and in the mindset of any kind of rational analyst, that's the best case scenario, right? You achieve with peaceful means a diplomatic breakthrough that then allows for a political reality to take root. And the political reality, most of us assumed for the United States, what they wanted was that Iran commits to not having a nuclear bomb, and not only commits to it, that there is a framework agreement that then allows for the verification of that not to happen, because that's what the JCPOA was. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was an international agreement that had monitoring branches and that gave access to the IAEA in order to monitor the nuclear sites of Iran, and thereby make sure that all of the enriched uranium and so on that they produced would not be able to be used for military purposes, but were purely for the civilian program, which is absolutely under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the right of Iran, and something that also major European countries and also the US under the JCPOA didn't question, right? The right of Iran to actually have a civil nuclear program was recognized, whereas having weapons was outlawed. And the idea of most of us was that Donald Trump would want to get back to some form of that kind of deal, which he himself sabotaged back in 2018 by just leaving the JCPOA that was created under Mr. Obama. And the idea that we were operating under is that as long as these negotiations are ongoing, and as long as the peace president, Mr. Trump, then can come back to his people and say, like, I got an agreement that makes sure and it's verifiable that Iran will never have a bomb, that was the goal. But now what we are finding out, and Mr. Trump actually said so much, he admitted that he was fully aware on Truth Social that the Israelis were preparing a strike, and he was also gleeful about the fact and talked about in very high praise about the successful surprise attack by Israel on Iran. That this was a good thing, and that the Iranians had it coming because he gave them 60 days, and on day 61, the Iranians, the Israelis now did their strike, and that this was purely in the court of this was all the mistake of Iran, but that he is very proud of the fact that he did this deception, right? That he led them in the belief that everything was still fine, and therefore they were not prepared. Although people knew that if the talks failed, then an attack might come, that the attack will come before the talks were even concluded. That was a surprise, and that is a real surprise. And the sixth round of talks were supposed to happen today on Sunday, right? And that's something that also in Iran, understandably, led people to believe that we are still in this diplomatic phase where a positive outcome might be achievable. Now, the Israelis clearly, utterly abused this, and they also used very dirty tactics in order to attack Iran, including smuggling drones into Iran and then launching them from inside Iran, which is exactly the same thing that Ukraine recently did in Russia, starting drones from inside Russia to attack these military bases. Now, Iran has been doing the same. I'm sorry, I constantly mix up the sides. Israel has been doing the same with Iran. And yes, on the one hand, this is now being celebrated as being super cunning. On the other hand, this is really scary. If Israel can do this in Iran, then probably Iran will find a way to do that in Israel. And it's just, it's just a terrorist tactic. It's just a terrorist tactic to try to use the infrastructure of the other against them, and then just blow things up, and also target a lot of civilians, target civilian scientists, nuclear scientists, and civilian infrastructure, civilian blocks. It's a terrorist strategy, and Israel, I would be very careful with being happy about this, just as Israel was very happy about the pager attacks. But again, if Israel can do this to their enemies, then their enemies will copy this kind of stuff, right? And this is just a form of escalation, and tomorrow it will hit Israel, and actually Israel is being hit right now, and I cannot emphasize this enough, right? How this must be coming also quite as a shock to the Israelis. And let's just look at this one here for instance. How large the destruction is now that Iran is able to inflict on the capital Tel Aviv, right? And entire apartment buildings now and neighborhoods start looking like the neighborhoods in Gaza, and you now find a lot of pictures and reports on, especially on social media, of Israelis crying about their houses being gone, and you by now have a death toll of apparently 10 people in Israel who died so far. This is a new experience, and this is directly related to the decision of the Netanyahu government to now launch its attack. I was criticized for my video 2 days ago that I speak of an Israeli attack on Iran and not a US attack, when it should be clear that the US is involved in this. I must say that on a diplomatic level, or on the world stage level, the United States still pretends that it is not a party to this war, and the US actually keeps warning Iran to not strike against any Americans. Lindsey Graham, in some of his speeches, already said that even if just one single American gets harmed, then all hell will break loose. And you can see how in certain circles of US media, especially Fox News and so on, the drum beat is very strong for US direct involvement. But at least for the moment, as I speak on June 15th, on this Sunday, the official narrative is still that the US is not involved, and does not want to be a direct party to the conflict. Although Trump and co have all said that they will of course support their ally Israel in its fight, but it seems to me that they're waiting for a convenient excuse. They're waiting for being able to pose as a victim. I mean, it's really, really important, this narrative of victimhood to Israel, but also to the United States, right? They need some Americans in a US base or somewhere in Tel Aviv or somewhere to die in order then to cry at the top of their lungs bloody murder, and we will now retaliate. The Iran killed our citizens, killed our troops without attack, without provocation, right? We we were just sitting there and trying to guard the peace, and then we get attacked. And this constant Pearl Harbor narrative, the Pearl Harbor, time and again, we were attacked, we are now striking back, we were attacked, we didn't start it, but we will end it. This kind of narrative is really important, and it seems to me that they're just waiting for one of these tripwires to blow up, for somebody some Americans to die in the region, so that they then have all and every excuse to go to war. Maybe a ship, it could be a ship in the Strait of Hormuz that is being sunk or something like this, in order then to say that they didn't want to be involved, but Iran left the United States, no choice. Something like this I'm waiting for. For the time being, Iran seems not to do that. Iran is not attacking for 48 hours, hasn't, to my knowledge, launched any kind of attack at US military bases, although that would have been more than possible because these bases are all around Iran. But currently they're firing in a straight line, more or less at Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other relevant points of interest in Israel. And the fact that the Iron Dome is not working, that must also come a bit as a shock. To this level is not working. But on the other hand, I must also emphasize that we are learning that the defenses of the Iranians are not working as planned. The Tehran is basically can be targeted. Tehran has been targeted, and also this large oil refinery. It's apparently really easy to set fire there. So both of them, Iran and Israel, are maybe not defenseless, but they are not able to prevent the other side from blowing up even very important infrastructure. The fact, of course, that the Israelis were able to kill even top brass commanders of the Iranians had on the one hand to do with the surprise effect, right, of just literally catching them in their sleep. Because it was like 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, sneaky, evil little attack from the Israeli side. But okay, fine. So they were able to surprise them, and then they were able to kill even more people when the surprise was like wearing off. So the Iranians are not able to withstand the attacks, and the Iranians obviously also have the weaker intelligence, or let's say the Israelis have a much better intelligence because they know where these people are. They know where the bedrooms of these scientists are that they're killing. So the level of intelligence is extremely precise of the Israelis, and the precautionary measures of the Iranians is obviously extremely weak because it is the movements of these important people are being tracked. We right now also have reports on the net that the family members of the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini and so on are fleeing the country. I do not know whether that's true or not, but the spin on the net is, as I said, this idea that a regime change can be brought about, right, and that it's just a matter of days until the Iranian regime will collapse. This is also then part of why it's at the moment so utterly difficult to understand what is really going on, because this fog of war includes the propaganda war, and the propaganda war, it tries to conjure up certain realities from both sides. Both sides are trying to overestimate their success, play down the impact of the attack from the other ones, and try to constantly say that victory is around the corner. They will succeed. Strategically speaking, Iran is in a very difficult position because Israel naturally, even if the United States should not get directly involved, and by directly involved I mean like US military planes and US military personnel directly targeting Iran. Even if that doesn't happen, Israel can of course count on unconditional supply of weaponry, as much as the US is probably able to produce. So when it comes to replenishing of these systems that are being depleted at the moment, Israel has its back by the US and also by the UK and probably other European countries who will try to support. It's just as they have done over the last years, even during the genocide in Gaza, right? Israel has been supplied with the bombs that killed all of these Palestinians mostly from outside its territory. For Iran, that's of course not the case. Iran needs to produce what it uses itself. It has to do so under very difficult international economic conditions. under all these sanctions. It has oil that, to a certain extent, that it can sell to countries like China. But now the Israelis are cracking down on those oil facilities and are trying to cripple the economy, apart from trying to take out all of the missile stocks. And you see a lot of videos actually on Twitter as well of Israelis striking with drones these rocket launchers, because a lot of them are, most of them, I suppose, are mobile and can be driven around and then started from somewhere. And the Israelis are targeting those, of course, in order to cripple Iran's ability to strike at Israel. This is working to some extent, but as we see, like Iran still has more than enough weapons, at least for now. The question is, how long will the stockpile last, and how many of these missiles have already been destroyed by Israel while they were on the ground? We don't know. I don't think there's anyone who can tell us that. The scenario that the Iranians are creating is that they still have a lot of them, and especially the hypersonic ones, the ones that cannot be intercepted, and that all of this is coming if Israel doesn't halt its attack. For now, it doesn't look as if Israel is planning to do so. Netanyahu and his team are extremely belligerent, and they are threatening severe punishment of Iran because, as they said, as the Minister of Defense Katz said, the Iranians, they crossed a red line by attacking civilian areas in Israel. The red line that Israel crossed about 80 years ago when it comes to massacring Arabs in the Middle East. So they are now claiming that this red line on their side has been crossed. But we know that both sides can still escalate this. One thing Iran didn't do so far, for instance, is Iran did not try to target Israel's nuclear facilities. As far as I know, there are, of course, these famous reactors of Israel, where also it produces some of its uranium. And to my knowledge, this has not been targeted by the Iranians. This is something they could do, but it is also clear that if they try to do that, Israel might take this as an attempt of creating a nuclear fallout, and might use this as an excuse to use one of its nuclear weapons, of which we know Israel has quite a few. And because we also know that Iran is unable to intercept a good number of the projectiles coming from Israel, we now know that Tehran is also being threatened nuclearly. If Israel decides to use one of the nuclear payloads and have them delivered to Tehran, they could nuke Tehran. This is very much on the cards, I believe, and this is probably also something that is certainly going through the mind of the Israelis, and it's certainly something that's on the mind of the Iranians. And so there is still, just as in the war between Russia and Ukraine, there's still a need on both sides to somehow make sure that the other one wouldn't go to the ultimate level. Now, the ultimate level that Israel has at its availability is, of course, much higher than what Iran has. But the fact that Iran is able to strike Israel, and could also strike them in places like these nuclear facilities, or might just, if the Israelis actually launched a nuclear strike against Iran, if they then said, okay, the game for us is over, this is lost, but before we go down, we just empty everything we have on the population centers in Tel Aviv and Haifa, that would be something that they could do, right? And this is something that Israel needs to prevent from happening very much, because as long as the Iranians do have military capabilities, they will pose such a threat. We also see that Israel is actually not very forthright when it comes to what's happening there. I've seen reports yesterday by this BBC reporter and how he was showing damage done in Tel Aviv. And then very, very angry Israeli comments below that this reporter is helping the terrorists, and that distributing a terrorist narrative, that he should be kicked out of the country for that. So it seems that the Israeli side is very much aware that if too much of this of these pictures of parts of Tel Aviv and so on being destroyed, and the carnage that also Iran can cause spreads, that this might actually create the image that Israel is not the almighty country that it tries to portray itself as, and that maybe there's also limits to what it can do. And this pro-war narrative at the moment on both sides actually says that the victory will be ours, and the any kind of damage has to be played down. So we are in the middle of this absolute horrific tragedy. It's now clear that the Iranians have no more intention of meeting the Americans for these nuclear talks. I mean, Mr. Trump, despite the fact that he said that he's proud of having gone through with this ruse, having deceived the Iranians, and that Israel is doing a great job. Despite having said that, he also said that he still demands that Iran makes a deal with the United States when it comes to the nuclear program, and that he gives them a second chance, right, for actually basically giving up their entire nuclear program and just give in to the United States demands. The Iranians made it clear that they're not interested anymore in any kind of talks. And really, one wonders why they would be interested in talks now that it is clear that the United States uses diplomatic maneuvers in order to fool the other side, fool them into agreeing to something, or fool them into believing that something was true while it is not. I mean, this is utter deception, right? And Arno Besra is absolutely right in calling this out, and others have been right, Glenn Greenan and so on, when they point out that there's now no way in which the Iranians can still believe that that the United States is an honest broker, or that the United States has an honest intention in actually then also like coming to an agreement that they will live up to, if they even before coming to an agreement sabotage the diplomatic negotiations. I mean, it's very, very dark times also for diplomacy, because it just proves once again that not only can you not trust that the United States will live up to its promises, or might just like throw out any kind of agreement that is made as soon as the ink is dry, you cannot even trust that they engage in good faith. This obviously was a very, very bad faith act from the part of the United States, and doing this kind of good cop, bad cop game together with Israel, pretending that there's still a negotiated outcome possible, while already having decided that you would green light the Israeli strikes on Iran is utterly unacceptable. I mean, it destroys all possibility for negotiations. We also learned that there was a phone call between President Trump and President Putin about the situation between Israel and Iran. But I really wonder, how the Russians can still deal with the United States, knowing that a lot of their diplomacy is also meant to just utterly deceive the other party and just maneuver them into a position of vulnerability. So a very, very dark day for international relations. We learned that the Chinese apparently and this seems to be confirmed, that the Chinese are saying they are supporting Tehran and in Tehran's right to defend itself and its legitimate interests. This news was also confirmed on, Wang Yi apparently really said so, that they are, they're not supporting Iran in a substantial way here, but they are choosing, at least rhetorically, who they see as the aggrieved party, right? Of course, in the Security Council, we cannot expect any kind of resolution to end this, because the United States will veto all and anything that is even in the slightest way critical of Israel. So the Security Council is certainly blocked. We will see what happens on the level of the UN General Assembly. That's the organ that, because it just votes and has majority vote and there's no veto, that can actually come up with a relatively strong condemnation of Israel. But this will still take at least a couple of days until something like this is to be expected, if at all. Although I do think the Iranians will, of course, use every diplomatic avenue that they have to at least show that the international community is not fine with this kind of Israeli warmongering. The question at this point, for practical purposes, however, is not on the international diplomatic scene. The question is whether or not the next couple of days are survivable to the Iranians, because despite the fact that Tel Aviv was hit, despite the fact that the Iron Dome is failing, the weaker party in this conflict is Iran, because it has less direct military support. and the danger that some of these strikes might lead to political cascades inside the country that would fulfill the wet dreams of the neocons for regime change, or that even Ayatollah Khomeini could be killed, or the cabinet could be eradicated, and diplomatic turmoil would follow. This is a real threat. This is a real. I do believe this is a possibility, and this is of course exactly what Israel and the United States are gambling on, because they say so, that's the real goal. But if that doesn't happen, if that doesn't set in, and if Iran is actually able to transform into some form of wartime economy and wartime footing, in which it is then also able to eliminate these strategic vulnerabilities with its own internal communication system, and make sure that the Israelis do not constantly know where their top commanders are located, and protect these people well enough while still using their infrastructure, then the Israelis will be very hard pressed, especially the longer these bombings of their own homeland is going on. We also see that in Israel itself there's unrest now. I mean, because naturally, and of course, people are afraid there. I do not think that Israel is at the brink of any kind of internal collapse, but the longer this situation and this suffering of the population in Israel also continues, well, the higher the blowback of this entire mission, because at the end of the day, even inside Israel, people will remember that the political decision that started this came, of course, from their great leader, right? From Netanyahu. As much as they will want to blame the axis of evil and the terrorists in Tehran, that this was kicked off, this spiral of violence, and that the outcome of it now is also a burning Tel Aviv. That will certainly be something that people will remember. And again, if it takes a long time, the harder it's going to be for the Israelis to sell this as a great victory, because that's what they want to do. I mean, that's the obvious goal. Like the way that they were able to first sneak attack and then kneecap Hezbollah in Lebanon, the way that they were able to take out much, if not all, of Hamas and bomb Gaza into smithereens, the way that the Syrian government collapsed. All of these were these victories of Israel, right? These were surprising and great victories for Israel, and they now want to do the mega Syria, right, on Iran, and the idea is that, well, we can pull this off a fourth or a fifth time, and just eliminate the last great strategic rival in our neighborhood. And even if this is going to cost hundreds or millions of lives in Iran, that's obviously something that Israel is more than happy to pay. But if it will come at the cost of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Israelis, well, this might look very, very different. Of course, we know that Israel will claim being the target of an extermination campaign and so on, as soon as even just a few dozen Israelis will die in this self-made hell of theirs, and will want US support, and will want all out US war with Iran. We don't know where this will go, and as we speak, as of now, if there is US and European involvement, there are talks about that. There's like airplanes, like German support airplane and US support planes and so on, and US intelligence, of course, being used. For all of these reports being there at the moment, what we don't have is direct kinetic involvement of the United States or of the Europeans. If it comes to such, that would be a next terrible step of escalation, and of course the nuclear escalation ladder is also still on the horizon. There are talks that the Pakistanis actually want to support the Iranians. I cannot confirm that. There's just rumors around, but that I'm hard pressed to believe that Pakistan would actually risk military confrontation with Israel over Iran. But we don't know where support also for Iran ultimately will come from, directly or indirectly, and we don't know currently what the Russians are doing on the ground. We know the Russians are there. We know the Russians have a military base still in Syria. We know the Russians have a security agreement with Iran, and we know to Russia, Iran is a pivotal partner, and they must be, the Russian military must be in high gear right now, trying to figure out how to react to this situation and how to probably support their partner in the Middle East. But all of this is unclear. What we need to look out for is whether or not these strikes are now going to, on both sides, going to die down optimally, and we get back to some form of very uneasy truce,